Number one, just be patient. Real estate investing is a long-term game. Do not let Instagram of, oh, I have one property, now I have a Ferrari. Like that's not real life.
Yeah.
Do what you will with that information. It is a long-term situation, and do not rush into deals without going through the analysis, and expect to run numbers on so many properties. Welcome back to Invested and Rested. We are now on our part 3 of our 4-part series. So for any newbies that are out there that are interested in investing in real estate, but they're not really sure where to start. So our 4 episodes, in case this is the first one that you're listening into, our first one was goals and finances. Second one is education and gathering your team. Today, we're going to be discussing analyzing deals, making offers, and contract process. And then our next episode next week will be about closing the deal and then organizing your business.
It sounds pretty boring, but I swear it's fun.
It really is. And I feel like there's just so many like nitty-gritty steps that we're discussing in here too. That's going to be really helpful of things that, when I was writing part of this, I was writing it based on things that I wish I knew when I had first started.
I know. We're trying to really, you see on Instagram, oh, just buy real estate, but it's a great investment. But and do you actually want to do this? Because there's nitty gritty in here. And we both love it. There's parts we don't love, but we thought we'd give you the whole process that you can decide for yourself and actually have some real steps to take if you want to get started.
Yeah, for sure. So at any time during this 4-part series, you think, gosh, I wish I could just ask Caitlin and Rihanna about my personal situation. Well, we got you. We're actually running a special right now for one-off coaching sessions. So you can get personalized attention to answer your questions and then set goals. If you just head over to investedandrested.com, you'll see the special right on our homepage. So let's get started.
Yeah, let's do it.
So now that you have a clear vision and you've been working on your education and gathering your team, the next step is to analyze deals and then make offers. So the first step in that is to define your investment criteria. So I just wanted to touch on this. I know this is something we kind of discussed previously as well, but think about go back to what your goals are and your strategy that we discussed in the last 2 episodes. And then from here is where you will start making offers and analyzing. So location are you going to be in your home state, in your hometown? Are you going to be out of the area? What type of property are you looking for? Residential, commercial, and industrial, short-term rental? What kind of investment horizon? Is it short-term, like flipping houses, or a live and flip, or a long-term buy and hold? And then your budget. What's your maximum purchase price? How much do you have for your down payment? And what are your financing options? So go back, discuss this with your team, AKA, in this case, your lender, and see what makes sense for you. So the first part is finding deals. If you are clear on your criteria, you're going to start looking for deals. So I like to use MLS, multiple listing service. If you are using a real estate agent, they will be able to set you up on a search on the MLS. You could also use your network. So yeah, your agent can set you up on an MLS search. You could also use your network and work with wholesalers or go direct to sellers.
Have you ever done that?
No. No. I'm on some wholesaler lists and I've never gone direct to sellers. There's been a couple that I'm like, if you ever want, contacted them, but very, very like one-off specific situations. And I've looked at some of the wholesalers stuff. Honestly, it all seems very overinflated that I've seen. And I don't know if they're just taking such a big cut on it or what those margins look like for them, but I've never seen the numbers make sense. What about you?
I've never done it, and I watch people talk about it, and I'm like, oh, I should get into that. But then I'm like, that takes a lot of time, and it just feels riskier to me. And I'm not, especially investing out of state, I'm not really open to taking that risk. I'm just like buying a
Yeah.
property. I'm not easily able to get there and walk through. And so for me right now, it's not worth the time and energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I feel like a lot of times people are like, oh, this is where the good deals are at. Nothing is good on the MLS. Well, I've made multiple things work on the MLS before. And so I can tell you that that's a lie. I'm sure there is absolutely amazing margins out there when you're going direct to seller. I'm sure there's also some situations where it does work to get properties with wholesalers. Again, personally haven't found anything, nor are a lot of the properties that they're selling, are they really in my buy box? It's a little bit more work that I'm looking to take on in neighborhoods that I'm not looking to invest in.
Yeah. And you can get off-market deals still if you have,
Yes.
you have relationships with different brokers, or even just my own broker is always looking for off-market deals. And if you have relationships, they can come to you. It's not a wholesale thing. It's not, but the 10 unit I bought was technically off-market. It probably would have gone to the MLS shortly after, but yeah, I had the relationship with my broker and they brought it directly to me. So that was pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, same here for my commercial real estate. Those were both off market and probably would have gone on. But a lot of commercial real estate actually is traded before it even hits the market.
Yeah.
So working with that team is super important and essential to create those relationships. I would say for residential, it definitely still happens. I have one under contract right now that we actually decided to never go on to the market. And we were still able to get well above what our asking price was.
Cool.
Which was really exciting. I'm obviously on the sell side, so
Yeah.
it worked out really well for us. But when it's a hot commodity, sometimes that works.
Yeah. Sweet.
So some things also to consider when you're looking for deals is, of course, the price. Now, this does not mean that you need to put your offer in at asking price. Now, if it's been on the market for 2 days, it's in multiples. Obviously, you're going to have to go over to be competitive. But I know Caitlin mentioned in previous episodes, just because it's listed at something and maybe it's been sitting on the market for a while does not mean that that's the offer that you need to put in. Make an offer that works for you and see if that works for the seller and go from there.
Yeah. And you never know. Like you could put an offer in and it's too low. And then 3 months later, when they don't have any other offers, they might come back to you. I have a couple that I'm hoping it might come back to me.
And sometimes it's all about timing and sometimes it's about following up. I mean, maybe you are the first one that put in that low offer and they're like, oh, absolutely not. We don't want to do that. And now you've kind of like taken that edge off of them. And now they're thinking, I am still sitting here. And then maybe right after you, 2 more people come in and they do the exact same thing. Well, that third time they might finally say yes. And it's not to you. Yeah. So following up and waiting, you just never know what's going to happen. And then I like to also take into account the location. Is there proximity to schools, transportation, employment hubs? Also taking a look at the property condition. Now, this is something you'll get more into the nitty-gritty of when you do your inspection, but taking a look at the age, the structural integrity, and any immediate repairs that maybe need to be done on this property. I have a fantastic inspector that looks into these things more, but I've worked with him so much that I'm starting to get more of an eye for things that are I'm not the inspector, but I'm definitely getting a lot better at seeing what maybe is wrong and what something that maybe I'm willing to take on. And sometimes I reach out to him when I'm touring a property too, and I'm like, hey, this seems a little bit odd. What do you think? But I often think this is an overlooked thing for that new investors. They don't really take into consideration some of those repairs that are going to need to be done. What do you think?
Yeah, I remember going to visit the 10-unit building, and I went with my dad, and I was so glad he was there because just like asked questions that I never thought about. And he's like, how old are these water heaters? And I was like, that's a good question, because like stuff like that, like it adds up. And we looked at the electrical panels, and luckily they'd been done within the last 10 years, and it was like 100-year-old building. So that was actually relatively new. But just like different, you just don't think of all the things on your own, especially when you're starting out. So either having a mentor or just like asking your inspector, like I talked to the inspector multiple times after he sent the inspection report. I was like, what does this mean? Does this mean that it's not good? Like, how much do you think this might cost me? And then also having somebody, I have like a roof guy that now I just have him go out to all the properties I am in contract on, because it's like, I want to know how much he's going to charge, how much this is all going to cost. So yeah, that's helpful to do and line those people up beforehand.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it also helps you run your numbers when, I mean, we have like a rule of thumb number that you use for CapEx, which is between like 5 and 10%. But are you going to be closer to that 5, or are you going to be closer to the 10, or are you going to be well above it because there's a lot of deferred maintenance that needs to get done? I think most of the time people are selling things because they don't want to deal with them anymore, whether that's the tenants or they moved out of state. But most of the time it's like there's bad tenants. I shouldn't say bad tenants. There's tenants they don't want to be working with anymore. Yeah. And also there's some deferred maintenance that they don't want to put any more money into the property. So they're like, I'll just give it to someone else.
That's why I sold the single family home, because like the foundation was messed up, and it was like we put foam into, like they injected foam into it. Literally one side of the house dropped 2 inches, and it actually was messing up the like cast iron tub, which my contractor was like, I've never seen a break in like a cast iron door.
Yeah.
And so we injected foam on one side of the house to lift it up. And it worked a little bit, but it was like totally just like to get us through for the next couple of years. And somebody bought it. So, but it's his own home, and he, I don't know what they're doing. They might be completely redoing the house, and it's not that big of a deal for them. But as an investor, I was like, I don't want to be stuck with like 50 to 100 grand CapEx in a couple years.
Yeah. No, thank you. No, I've done the same thing. My second rental that I had, it was some things were starting to reach the end of its life for sure. This was an older home. It already had a lot of deferred maintenance on it. And I definitely got very lucky. And in the inspection, we actually found out that there was an issue with the main and the sewer, and that it needed to get replaced. And they had to remove the front steps in order to do so. And I was like, wow, I just avoided and we negotiated this, right? And they got a heck of a deal on it. And I got a deal too, because I was just ready to be done.
Yeah.
But I just avoided a $16,000 repair.
Great.
It's awesome.
Amazing.
All right. So real estate investing is really great. It's not always, but this is why we're having these conversations. It isn't always just like fun and bubbly and amazing, right? It's like, let's talk about the real stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and things that if you're planning for them correctly, it's not going to feel like the end of the world.
Yeah. If you run your numbers right, you're saving money every month, putting money into reserves, so you have money for those CapEx expenses. Of course, sometimes crazy stuff is going to come up, but the hope is that you have enough when it does.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing I like to look at when I'm evaluating deals in a specific area is the market trends. So in your local market, is there a lot of growth? What do the companies that employ people in that area look like? This is one of the reasons I love the Twin Cities where I live, is because we actually have 15 different Fortune 500 companies here. So we're not just relying on one or maybe 2 large employers. It's very balanced. We have Target, we have 3M, we have Best Buy, so many other large companies here that there's always going to be new people coming in. We're a very large hub. So though our population isn't growing like crazy in Florida and Texas, I'm very confident that we're going to continue to slowly rise in our numbers.
Yeah. And for me, Spokane, like, I guess there's like this huge new Amazon center coming in, because Amazon based in Seattle, and Spokane's the next biggest city. So
how far away are they?
About a 5-hour drive.
Okay.
Yeah. So some big Amazon thing is coming. And yeah, you can just see, there's some other companies coming in too, but that I can't remember right now, but there's definitely growth. I like that too.
That's perfect. Great. The next step is going to be financial analysis. So running your numbers through some sort of calculator for property investing right away. at some point, you can probably look over through a lot of information by just kind of doing a napkin test. But as we've just mentioned, it is so important to be running these numbers right away, because that way, when a large expense comes up or you do have vacancy, you're like, you can still sleep at night and you're just like, oh, I planned for this. This makes sense. This is part of the process. Things happen. But if you're not planning for that right away, everything is going to feel like an emergency because you're not prepared.
Yeah. And I, on both my properties too, I had more money left over that I just leave in that bank account. It didn't start at zero. I had some money, and like the one I did with partners, I raised more money than needed for the down payment so that we had money already, especially because we're doing renovations. But it's just a good idea to already have that cash. So raise a little bit more than just to buy it so that you're not freaking out when something happens. Like, like I told earlier, the druggie ruined my whole, ruined one of the apartments, and I had to do a turnover right away, which I wasn't expecting, but I had money ready for me. So
yeah. So then you're ready to go. And I like to put mine into a high yield savings account.
Yeah.
Just so that it's always earning a little bit of interest. Do you do the same thing, or how do you keep yours separate?
I do for the 10-unit building. I have a high yield savings personal account, but for the one with partners, it's set up like a business. And since it is with other people, it has to be in a business account, and it's still a high yield savings account, but business accounts don't have that 4.5% right now. They have, I found one that has 2%. So it's pretty good.
Nice. Well, if you ever want to switch to a Minnesota bank, I know a guy. So
sweet.
Yeah. So I work with a local bank here, and I was like, look, I have all of these different properties. I want to get everything switched over to you. The majority of my loans are with them. So this is like, hey, you're giving me all this money. I will give you my deposits.
Yeah.
And along with that, I was like, my savings accounts aren't going to really be that high because I have so many different accounts, but I'm like, I do want that interest rate. What can we do? And I'm not sure what they do on their end, but they were able to make it some sort of portfolio situation. So I am able to still get that high interest rate on each savings account for business.
Are you interested in real estate investing, but not quite sure where to start? Or maybe you already own some properties, but not sure what to do next? Or are you considering changing your investing strategy from long-term to short-term, or single-family to multifamily? Well, let us help.
From now until June 30th, we're running a promotion for one-off coaching sessions. Get personal attention to help make those investing dreams a reality with either Caitlin or Rihanna as your coaches. Grab a single session for $100 or one session with each of us for just $150. Go to investedandrested.com for more information. Again, that's investedandrested.com.
Nice. Good to know.
Yeah. See, and it's so interesting because it's like there's so many different situations and different ways that things work out.
Yeah. And just talking about it is one of the best ways. Like, I can go to Rihanna's guy now and get 4%. Or now it just is also making me think, maybe the local bank I worked with actually could do a business account up there. And I'll have to reach out. But that's
awesome.
The cool part about talking to people.
For sure. All right. So, and then going back to the financial analysis. So when you're first getting started, I would recommend running almost every single property through the calculator you're using. You can reach out to us and we have a couple options for you. Otherwise, Bigger Pockets, I know that they have a great calculator. I'm not sure if you have to have their pro account or if that's free. I'm not actually sure. But just get used to running those numbers and see what they look like. Now, the majority of them aren't really going to work out and you're going to be like, what the heck? This is practice. You're not going to find, more than likely, you're not going to find a great deal right away on your first or your third time running these numbers.
Yeah. You're also going to get used to about how much each door should cost. That's a good deal. You know what I mean? Like, I know now in Spokane area, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, about $100K or a little bit over is a solid deal. you get into 125, 130, there's either it's not a good deal or there's no value to add. So you're not going to be able to push the appreciation. So yeah, you'll start to, the more you run, the easier you just kind of start having the math in your head. And like, oh, no, that's not a good deal.
Mm-hmm.
Or like last week I found one that was 6 unit for 300,000 and I emailed my agent. I was like, what is this? And then we found out, did I talk? I don't know if I told you this already.
You told that you told me, but you didn't tell me what happened. So tell me.
Oh yeah. So the end story of this was I was like, what's the catch? Why is this such a good deal? And he found out that it was only permitted to be a 2 unit.
Oh, and it's 6 stuff?
And it's a 6th unit now. It was like a big mansion that like was converted. So he was like, I don't think you want to go down that path of like zoning and re-permitting, and like that's a big do. And my stepbrother just did that in this area with zoning, and it took forever. And he was going to the office all the time in their face. And I'm like, I can't do that being out of town.
Yeah, right. Ugh, yeah, that sounds like such a pain. Is it still on the market, or did that get snatched up by someone else?
I haven't looked. I should check. I mean, somebody that's local that like has a construction crew, it'd be perfect for them because they could kick all the tenants out, re-permit, like get a permit to make it into a true 6 unit.
Right. I agree. There's deals out there for everyone, and what some people want to take on isn't what somebody else wants to take on. Exactly. And that's okay. This isn't like some black and white one system only approach.
Exactly. Like if this was in your area, you might do it with your fiance being construction and be able to know some more about those laws and whatnot. It might help.
Yeah, for sure. So the next part is the market analysis, taking a look at comps. Is this also comparable to what you can get in the area? So I like to take a look at recent sales and see what those sales prices were of similarly sold properties and current listings. Taking a look at what else is out there and available in this area at this price point. And this might tell you a little bit about the area that you are investing in as well. You know, there's some neighborhoods that it looks like there's great deals everywhere because those property values are less and there is room for cash flow. But maybe that is like a C-D neighborhood and isn't something that you can find a property manager for, and not something that you want to invest in yourself. Well, or maybe it is. Then great, go ahead and get all the deals. But those are some things to notate and then talk with your team about.
Yeah, and there's like, I had with my leasing job, this guy had a really cool building, updated it all. It was beautiful. We could not get renters because there's a giant homeless encampment next to him. And he ended up selling it because he was just like, this is so hard to get quality renters that are okay with living next to a homeless encampment. But that stuff happens. But do your due diligence of like, if you're not on the ground, figure out get your agent to drive by and give you that information.
Yeah, for sure. And I didn't actually mention this when I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about, but in this scenario, you would need somebody on the ground for Caitlin's situation. But I also like to do a Google walk. Mm-hmm. So I will go, and that's not always updated. Sometimes that could be a couple years old. Yeah. But at least you can get a good idea for the neighborhood and what's around there.
Yeah.
I also like to look at the current rental rates to make sure that this property will cash flow. A lot of times when people are selling properties, if there's tenants in there, they're usually under market and they will list on there what the market rate rent is. Do not automatically listen to this. Do your own research instead. Sometimes these numbers are slightly inflated. It can also depend, for me specifically, it can really depend on the time of year. You know, December, January, February, rents are typically going to be a little bit lower than what you might get for a May and a June.
Totally.
So I like to look at like rentometer. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Okay. We'll go with either one. Zillow to see what's out there. If you're going to be using going for short-term rentals, AirDNA, or looking at short-term rental calendars for different rentals that are in your area.
Yeah, for sure.
Are there any others you use?
I would just go on Zillow or Trulia, honestly. But now I also know from having the unit what is actually possible because, like you said, they definitely inflate those prices a little bit. But my unit, the updated units get 900 to 950. The older units are getting more like 700 to 800. So it's like, if I were to re-rent an older unit without updating it, I would still get 700 to 800. So you have to calculate in, I'm going to have to update that to get the extra $100 to $200.
All right. And then the next point is structuring your offer. So based on your analysis and working with your team, make an offer that makes sense for the numbers that you ran and your investment goals. So, and take into consideration, of course, I've won some properties in multiple offers. Well, that looks a lot different than something that's been sitting on the market for 60 days without any price adjustments. So taking a look at, what the situation is, what price makes sense for you, and then also for maybe the situation at hand, writing in any contingencies. So I always include contingency for financing, inspection, and then appraisal. There's an earnest money deposit, meaning part of your deposit is going to need to go over to the seller. Well, it stays in a trust account, but it is going to be going to them within 3 days of having your offer accepted. So in the event there's something that falls through with financing, your inspection, your appraisal, you will get that money back.
Yeah. I just got that money back for the property that fell through. But I was a little worried because
you got it.
We were getting close to the date. And I was like, oh my God, am I not going to get my earnest money deposit back?
Yeah.
But I got it back quickly.
Yeah. Yours was like right at the nick of time and worked out honestly perfectly. But it gets a little scary sometimes. And then closing timeline, work with your team to figure out what a good closing time would be for, your lender to get everything finished. And then taking a look at all those necessary steps and approvals. So is there time for the appraiser to get in there? There's been some years here where it's just the market has been so crazy that appraisers are running a few weeks behind. So we had to move closings out so that we could still get our appraisal done and finished.
Totally.
And then same things for your inspection timeline. And I'll touch on this a little bit later too, but typically for residential properties, it's going to be like 3 to 10 days for your inspection period. But for commercial, that can be 1 month to many months, really, to take a look at, the property, get your inspectors in there. Sometimes it's looking at leases, confirming that those leases are the correct amount. With commercial properties, there's going to be a little bit more to look at, so the timeline is longer, but make sure you get on it, right away so you could run those numbers and make sure they make sense for you. And it's what you had originally ran and maybe what they're listing and claiming is true for their property as well.
Yeah, totally. And leave time to get the inspector in and people like I was talking about with the roofer, and people that can tell you how much that's actually going to cost. So the inspector will just tell you, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, but doesn't always have the numbers to tell you, this is going to cost you $30,000 or this is going to cost you $50,000 or whatever. They don't always have those numbers. So leave time for that too.
And take a look too at the risk assessment while you're going through some of that due diligence. Is there any potential for those property values to decrease? Maybe soon they're going to be permitting some new, building. I have no idea. Some rezoning some of the areas right across the street, and it's going to turn into something that would change your property values. Or it's a large business is nearby, but they have plans to be moving in the next couple of years. What is the risk for vacancy and non-paying tenants? Are the tenants in there right now paying and everything on time? When are their leases up, or are they able to move out early and make sure that you're accounting for those things. And then also the financing risk, make sure you speak with your lender, see if you can lock in your rate. Otherwise, it does work a little bit differently with each situation and also with commercial on what that locking in looks like. Sometimes you're not able to right away, and those rates can change and affect mortgage payments.
And that's why mine just fell through, because the rate changed so much that it didn't make sense anymore.
Mm-hmm. And thankfully, because you had that financing contingency in there, you were able to get your money back. But I mean, depending on how that was written, there could be situations where people won't get their money back, and then they're stuck either losing their earnest money or going through with the deal and maybe having those numbers not work as much in your favor.
Yeah.
All right. Property inspection and due diligence. So after you're putting in your offer, you're going to leave time for that inspection and due diligence. I think basically we've touched on everything here. And then as Caitlin mentioned, just make sure that you're always leaving time for those to get those prices from specific vendors, and then time to renegotiate during that inspection period too, if something new came up.
Yeah, it's really nice to get credit at closing for those things, because then you actually have the cash. If you're not getting credit at closing, then you don't actually have the cash at the end to make those fixes. So just, most agents know that, I would think, unless they're super new or something. But that's definitely the route to go, because we got a $25K credit on the 10-unit building because of the roof was awful and it was going to need to be repaired right away. And so we got that credit, and we did the roof the first month that we got it, because it was winter. I needed the roof.
Yeah. Nice. Do you typically ask for money off, or do you ask for things to be fixed before you close?
I prefer money off, because then I have control of how it's done using the vendors that I trust. Mm-hmm. I just worry that they'll do it and do a lazy half-ass job. Mm-hmm. And then, I'm saddled with it a few months or a few years later, and because they didn't do it right, because they were just trying to fix it good enough to close. We are in the midst of our Real Estate Investing 101 series, where you're learning all the steps to get started in real estate investing. But sometimes the more you know, the more questions you have. So on July 17th, you're going to want to hop on our group coaching call. It's totally free. You come on, ask your specific questions, and also get to learn from others and their questions. And you're also going to understand the benefit of coaching and how helpful it can be along your real estate journey.
Yeah, so head over to investedandrested.com to sign up today so that everybody can get something out of this. Our spots are limited, so make sure you secure your space today. Thanks, friends. Yeah, for sure. I typically choose the same one when I'm working with buyers. I give them the option and kind of go over what those pros and cons look like. And sometimes there's been situations where, and depending on how handy or what my clients are looking to take on, I'm like, we will have a licensed person take care of this prior to closing. And we've done it a couple times too. Somebody's dishwasher broke before closing, and we were like, just go ahead and replace the dishwasher. I don't want one more thing to do. And then we would have saved money, because we probably would have done it ourselves. But we're like, might as well just get that taken care of. And that was something that was for error, like a roof would be, for example.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that I'd be fine with. But yeah, with the buyer of our single family home rental, he wanted us to do all the fixes, because one of it had to do with termites. And he was worried if we just gave a credit that they would find termites everywhere. And we were really actually worried. The same on the seller side of like, oh crap, what if we do find all these termites? But I talked to the guy, he's like, no, it's like a 95% chance that it's just this like $2,000 cost or whatever. So, and I was like, okay, let's just fix it and go for it. We'll risk that 5%.
Yeah. Oh, good. I know every situation I think can end up just being a little bit different depending on what it is and how much risk there is into finding more things once the property's opened up a little bit more.
Yeah. And so depends, like you were saying, on how many offers there were. He was our only offer. So we wanted to make this work. And, if we had multiple offers, we might have just been like, no, screw it. Like,
Right.
somebody else will take this as is. But and so on the other side, when you're buying, you do have to consider how many offers are on the table. With my 10 unit, I knew I was the only offer. With the 4 unit, I knew I wasn't the only offer. So we had to take, not asked for too much because we didn't want to mess up the deal.
Yeah. Great thing to point out there, because that stuff happens all the time where it just really depends on the situation and what you're working with, on what the right thing is to do to move forward.
Yeah.
After, I think we touched on negotiations a little bit. So after the negotiation, then there will be the final due diligence and closing time. I know after all these steps, you're like, oh, finally, I am here. And this is just the beginning, so it gets exciting after this. But once your offer is accepted and you do the final due diligence, I always like to do a walkthrough the day before or the morning of closing. Just make sure, no walls were kicked in. One thing that I like to do that I don't think a lot of agents do is, I like to run the water, turn on all of the lights. Does the bathroom fan work? Are there any leaks? Because the last thing that I want to do is to deal with a new situation that came up, right? So I like to check on all of that stuff. And then you'll go to closing more than likely with, I guess, how do you do closing? Do you do everything remote?
Mm-hmm. We get a mobile notary.
Okay, nice. Yeah, so you can get a mobile notary. You can go in person if you're in the area. And it feels kind of like signing your life away the first time. The stack of paper is like a couple inches high. So it seems, right? And I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't know this was going to be so much.
Yeah. What's hard about the mobile notaries is they don't have any idea. Like, they have a little bit of idea, but like they can't answer any specific questions. And the last one, they gave us the papers an hour before the mobile notary was coming.
Oh,
and so we had no time to review anything. And the mobile notary came at 6:00. So nobody was picking up their phone. And so at the end, I'm too laissez-faire. My husband and I balance each other out. He was like, I don't understand this, and you don't have the answer, and nobody's picking up this phone right now.
Yeah.
So we're like, you're just gonna have to come back. We're just gonna have to sign this later. Like, this is not our fault. And and so it worked out. The next day, we got our questions answered, and I forget, but there was some mistake or something. But yeah, so it's, if you can't do it locally with a title company that can answer your questions, that's a little more helpful. But
yeah, and getting the paperwork more than an hour in advance. I had one similar to that where we were driving an hour and a half away to do the closing.
Mm-hmm.
And same, we were in the car when we got the documents, and I'm like, this is stressful. I don't like this. I like to review it beforehand, make sure everything looked good, and have some time to just like process what's on the paper first.
Yeah, and just make sure it says the same thing as what you think it's going to say. And but it is stressful. It's a ton of papers, and you're like, holy crap, this is a lot of money. But at the end, it's fine.
Yeah, I think I just, my first closing I ever did for my house hack, it was delayed for some reason. So we were sitting in there, and this is back in the day when the buyers and the sellers are in the same room.
Oh.
Just sitting in there with my agent for like an hour, just chatting about the house. Thankfully, everybody was like in agreement on selling the property. It wasn't like a divorce or somebody didn't really want to move. Yeah. And I think I was just shaking, feeling like I was signing my life away. But honestly, most of it just has to do with financing and making sure that you are who you say you are. Yes, this is the amount that you are taking out. Majority of the time, especially when you're with a title company, they will explain everything to you that you're signing. So it's just a little overwhelming, but then you're like, oh, okay, I did it. I could totally do that again. And it's going to be the same process every single time.
Yeah, it's like everything that we've been talking about sounds really intense and hard, but once you've done it one time, it's so much easier the next time because you know what to expect, and you know that it is a little scary, but knowing what to expect makes it so much easier the next time.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are basically all of the steps to analyzing deals and what to be looking for. But a couple of things I just want to leave you with is number one, just be patient. Real estate investing is a long-term game. Do not let Instagram of, oh, I have one property, now I have a Ferrari. Like that's not real life.
Yeah.
Do what you will with that information. It is a long-term situation, and do not rush into deals without going through the analysis, and expect to run numbers on so many properties. On your first 5 to 30 deals that you run, it's not always likely that you're going to find something that works. A lot of times you really need to get creative, and you're still in that learning process and understanding how all of this work. Similarly to if you were looking for a job, how many companies' profiles on LinkedIn are you looking at before you even decide that you want to put in your resume? Or I want to say put in an offer, but if you're going to put your resume in. And then from there, you're interviewing with them and talking about the salary and the benefits. And then from there, how many positions are you offered and how many positions do you want? This is the same thing. Do not expect to run numbers on 3 properties and then for them to all work out. Like, you need a lot of patience.
And even make offers on 3 properties and gonna work out. My most recent one, we made offer. This was the 5th offer.
Yeah.
And it still didn't work out.
Right. And it happens. And just know, like, that's okay and that's normal. But at the same time, if you do run one on the first property that run the numbers on and it does magically work out, great. Check with your team and be like, hey, can you just double check this? Did I just basically win the lottery? Am I this lucky? That's awesome. Like, that, there's nothing wrong with it either, but just double check with your team on that, I think.
And one thing I would say too is, like, when you first start looking at places, like, go back to that. So what I did was I started looking and I couldn't find one. And then I had read Rich Dad Poor Dad, whatever. And it talked about just making offers based off of what you think it should go for.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back and looked again with a different mentality of, like, what would I offer on that property? Is it close enough to the asking price that it's worth making an offer? I mean, you can make an offer at no matter what, it doesn't hurt. But that's the same thing as, like, when you first start looking for a job, you're like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And then you know the jobs that are out there, you're like, maybe I should look again with a fresh set of eyes.
Yes. That's a really great point. And it's just kind of a fun exercise too. Like, even if those properties already sold that you want to go back to and just see what would work and make sense for you, like, do it so that you can get that creative muscle working to see what would make sense. And maybe it's, oh, this property wouldn't work for a long-term rental, and that's what I'm looking for, and I'm going to stick with that. But maybe if we were to run it but like this, maybe that would make more sense. Or if it were to be this, or could we get this changed over to a duplex? Like, we actually have a lot of fun doing that. We're like, I know this isn't going to work. Maybe it's not the right time for us to buy, but we're like, okay, let's play a game. Let's rerun these numbers. And how would we make this deal work? And now that muscle is, like, totally on all of the time, where a lot of times I can just look at a property in my area and know if it's going to make sense.
That's so true. The more you do it, the bigger muscle is built, and you can just do it much easier when you keep going. And just know that this is all a learning curve, and it just gets easier along the way. I mean, of course, there's always hiccups, like with anything, but
that's what keeps it fun and interesting too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Keeps you on your toes.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to talk about is getting a base hit instead of a home run. Obviously, we want your first deal to make sense. We don't want you to lose money. We want you to be smart and educated, and feel good about what you're doing. You're probably a little scared in the beginning. Don't worry. That's totally normal. Me too. Just know that your faith and your education is going to go further than being stuck in fear.
I'd never heard that analogy before, and I love it.
Thanks. I just kind of made it up on the fly. I'm going to be honest with you, but
it's just like kind of like the same thing of, like, taking baby steps and not trying to walk and knowing that you're but I like it.
Thanks. I've had a couple conversations this past weekend about like, how do you get past the fear of what you're doing and know that it makes sense? And I'm like, I try to look back on my journey and I was totally flying blind. I just had more trust and faith and curiosity and trust in my team too. So my agent for my first 2 properties, I used an agent. I wasn't licensed myself. And he had rental properties and he helped me run the numbers. And I'm like, I'm putting trust in myself because I'm doing my homework, but I'm also putting trust in him, knowing that he is not going to put me in a bad situation. And with that, I was able to move past my fear. Not move past. I was able to function within it still. I was still scared. I still didn't sleep for a little bit at night. And, it was just something, just like anything you do that's scary.
Yeah.
So,
well, and one of the reasons why I trust the brokers that I'm working with, because if I get into a good deal, then they have property management business, construction business, and then I'll buy another property. They're not wanting me to get into a crappy situation because then they'll lose my trust and I won't buy more properties with them. So that's the other part about finding the right team that has some skin in the game too. And they want you to succeed just as much as they want to succeed.
Yeah, very well said. So the last thing I want to talk about is, the base hit versus home run. So most people, they get stuck in making analysis paralysis instead of just making a move because they need it to hit maybe the outdated 1% rule, or they're looking for X, Y, and Z returns. Now, it's definitely great to have goals on what your returns look like and to be very specific about it with some flexibility at the same time. And just know I want to know what your opinion is, but my opinion is just get your first property. I want it to make sense, yes, but it does not need to be a home run. It does not need to be a sexy, super cool short-term rental business or whatever people with their Ferraris are talking about. I don't know. I'm going after cars today. Online,
Yeah.
Like my office, for example, how boring in some ways is it to own an office building, especially right now? Oh, offices are so bad. Nobody needs office space anymore, whatever. Obviously, that's not the case. And and everything is going well, but that's not sexy. And when I first ran the numbers on that, it was going to be basically a break-even property. Now, we did have a lot of wiggle room in there. We had our CapEx, honestly, probably more than we needed. We had vacancy, probably more than we needed, and all of these things, but it was going to break even. But for me, moving from single family to a duplex to a 22-unit office building, that felt like getting my first property again. That was a huge jump.
Mm-hmm.
And my realtor, because I used a commercial realtor on this, he was like, this is a base hit. You're going to have more and more base hits. And guess what? All of those are going to equal to being a home run. And you're going to look back on this and you're going to be so happy that you did it.
Mm.
And turns out he's not full of crap. And even just little things that we've done to raise the rent and get a couple new tenants in there and just some managerial changes, our numbers are insane now. And we are well past the break-even point.
Amazing.
So just focus on getting started.
Yeah. Base hit. Just do that.
Base hits, 4 base hits equals a home run.
Yeah.
And then from there, you learn so much on your first property that you're going to be looking at your second property probably with a little bit of different eyes and more experience.
Totally.
Yeah. All right. I think that wraps up today's episode. Feel free to shoot us a message and tell us what you learned. What was the most impactful part of this? Something that you didn't think of before. Or leave a comment on YouTube, or our Instagram is Invested and Rested, or our website is investedandrested.com.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you haven't already, listen to the first 2 episodes, and we'll be back next week with the next episode about what to do after you close on your property, setting up a business and property management if you choose to do that route. And yeah, we hope you will join us again, and see you next week.
See you next week. Bye, friends. Thanks, friends. That's the episode for today. We so appreciate you being here with us, and we'd love if you could leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts.
And don't forget to subscribe for future episodes and check the show notes to sign up for the waitlist for our retreats and future coaching programs. Stay rested, friends, and talk soon.